A sharp knock echoed across the old courtroom. Every head turned toward the front. There stood a woman who looked so out of place it almost hurt to watch. She wore a plain gray dress. The hem looked slightly frayed. Her brown hair was pulled back into a simple ponytail. She clutched an old handbag to her chest as if it was a shield. Judge Carter, a tall man with sharp features and colder eyes, leaned forward. He tapped his pen hard against the heavy wooden desk. "State your name for the record," he said, voice dripping with impatience. The woman cleared her throat, but her voice barely came out. "Emily Harris," she whispered. The judge narrowed his eyes. "Louder," he barked. "Emily Harris," she said again, this time forcing the words out. Murmurs rose from the back rows. A few people shook their heads. Some snickered. The woman's cheeks flushed deep red. She gripped the handle of her bag tighter, knuckles turning white. Judge Carter scanned the papers in front of him, then looked up with a slight smirk. "You are here today to request an emergency injunction," he said. "And you have filed it yourself? Without a lawyer?" Emily nodded. Her hands trembled, but she stayed silent. The judge let out a short, sharp laugh. "This court does not entertain nonsense," he said. "And your request is pure nonsense." A wave of cruel laughter rippled through the courtroom. Even a few court officials cracked a smile. Emily lowered her head. Tears blurred her vision, but she bit her lip and stood still. She had promised herself she would not cry. Not here. Not in front of people who wanted to see her fall apart. Judge Carter leaned back in his chair. He folded his arms across his chest and looked at her with open disdain. "You have no evidence," he said. "You have no witnesses. You barely have a case. And frankly, looking at you, I doubt you even understand what you filed." Emily swallowed hard. Her throat burned. I have proof," she said, her voice cracking. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Do you? Then produce it." Emily opened her handbag with shaky fingers. She pulled out a small stack of papers, each one carefully protected in plastic sleeves. She stepped forward to hand them to the bailiff. The bailiff, a bulky man with a bored expression, took them with a sigh and handed them to the judge. Judge Carter barely glanced at the documents before tossing them onto his desk. "Unverified," he said without hesitation. "Useless." Emily's heart sank. "No, please," she said. "You have to look at them. Please. Just look." The judge rapped his pen on the desk again. "You will not beg in my courtroom," he said. Emily blinked hard, forcing the tears back. She had no lawyer because no lawyer had believed her. They had told her she was chasing ghosts. They had told her she would humiliate herself if she tried to stand against the people she was accusing. But she had no choice. She had to try. She took a deep breath and pulled out her phone. Judge Carter narrowed his eyes. "You cannot use a phone in my courtroom," he said sharply. Emily ignored him. Her fingers moved across the screen, scrolling through her contacts until she found the one name she never thought she would have to call in front of strangers. Her husband. Justice Daniel Harris. The highest court in the country. Her rock. Her last hope. She hit the call button and raised the phone to her ear. Judge Carter's voice thundered across the room. "I will have you removed." But he stopped when the phone clicked onto speaker. A calm, commanding voice filled the courtroom. "Put me on speaker," said the voice. The crowd grew silent. Emily obeyed. The voice came through loud and clear. "Judge Carter," it said, "this is Justice Daniel Harris of the Supreme Court." Gasps filled the room. Judge Carter's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The color drained from his face. The audience, who had been mocking and laughing moments ago, sat frozen in their seats. "You are currently humiliating my wife," Justice Harris said. "And you are violating several judicial codes of conduct." The judge tried to speak, but no sound came out. "From this moment," Justice Harris continued, "you are under formal review." Then the courtroom doors slammed open. 2 federal officers entered. Their black suits and stern faces left no doubt about their authority. They moved straight to the judge's bench. The lead officer stepped forward. "Judge Carter," he said, "you are hereby suspended pending investigation. Please come with us." Judge Carter's hands shook as he gathered his papers. No one in the courtroom moved to help him. No one spoke. He was alone. Just like Emily had been when she stepped forward. The officers escorted him out. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was heavy. Emily lowered her phone and tucked it back into her handbag. She did not smile. She did not cry. She just stood there, breathing in the heavy air of a room that had suddenly shifted in her favor. But deep down, she knew it was not over. Because what she had uncovered went far beyond a single corrupt judge. She had stumbled onto something darker. Something that reached higher than anyone dared to believe. She clutched the strap of her handbag tighter. She thought about the night she first found the hidden file in her neighbor's abandoned house. She thought about the strange phone calls. The car that had followed her home one night. The anonymous threats slipped under her door. It had all led to this moment. But it was only the beginning. Justice Harris's voice came through the phone again. "I am sending someone you can trust," he said. "Stay there. Don't leave with anyone else." Emily nodded, even though no one else could see. She sat down on the cold wooden bench at the front of the courtroom. Her legs shook with exhaustion. Around her, people began to whisper again. But this time, the whispers were different. Curious. Worried. A young woman, dressed in business clothes, approached carefully. "Ma'am," she said softly, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Emily looked up at her. There was no anger in her eyes. Only sadness. "You believed what you saw," Emily said quietly. "Not what was true." The young woman's face fell. She nodded and backed away. Emily leaned against the bench, letting herself breathe for the first time in days. But even as her body relaxed, her mind raced. She thought about the old leather folder hidden in her apartment. The one filled with names, dates, and secret deals. She thought about what would happen if the wrong people found out what she had. Justice Harris had promised to protect her. But deep inside, Emily knew one thing with painful clarity. Sometimes even the highest powers could not stop what was coming. A cold shiver ran down her spine. Outside the courthouse, a dark car pulled up. The driver stepped out, wearing a black suit and dark sunglasses. He scanned the area before stepping inside. Emily stood up slowly, heart pounding. The man approached her and leaned down. "Mrs. Harris," he said, voice low, "we need to move. Now." Emily hesitated. Something about the man felt wrong. He said all the right words. He had all the right badges. But her gut screamed at her to run. She looked around. The court officers were busy gathering papers. The audience was distracted. No one was watching her. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her handbag. Inside it, tucked carefully between old receipts and tissues, was a flash drive. The flash drive that held everything. The real reason she was being hunted. The man reached out a hand. "Come on," he said. "Justice Harris sent me." Emily took a step back. She needed to decide fast. One wrong move could cost her everything. Her heart raced so loud she could hear it in her ears. She turned her head, scanning the room. And then she spotted him. A second man. Standing by the exit. Watching her. Also wearing a black suit. Also carrying an official badge. Which one was real? Which one was lying? Her mind raced. Trust the wrong one, and she would disappear without a trace. Stay here too long, and she would lose her only chance to survive. The flash drive pressed against her palm inside the bag. She made a choice. Without a word, Emily turned and sprinted toward the back exit of the courtroom. The two men shouted after her. Footsteps pounded the floor behind her. She burst through the heavy doors into the sunlight. Blinded for a moment, she stumbled down the courthouse steps. She heard the men chasing her. Mrs. Harris. Stop. But she ran. She ran like her life depended on it. Because deep down, she knew it did. The cold air hit Emily's face as she ran down the steps of the courthouse. Her breath was quick and shallow, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the footsteps behind her, but she didn't dare look back. She was alone. She was running. She was not sure who to trust anymore. The two men had been too close. Too perfect. Too official. But she couldn't stop. She couldn't slow down. The ground beneath her feet seemed to blur with each step. The courthouse was far behind, and she was heading toward the alleyway when she heard a shout. It was the man who had followed her from the back of the room, the one who had been waiting by the exit. Mrs. Harris, stop. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Not with everything at stake. Emily's shoes slapped against the cold pavement, her pulse racing faster than her feet could carry her. The alley was dark, narrow. The buildings towered on both sides like silent giants. There was nowhere to run. Nowhere to hide. She glanced over her shoulder for a split second. The man was gaining on her. She could see the gleam of his sunglasses even in the dim light. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her handbag. Inside it was the flash drive. That small, unassuming piece of technology was the key to everything. The reason why she had been threatened. The reason her world had been turned upside down. The drive contained the names. The dates. The locations. Everything she had uncovered about the underground operations that ran the city's most powerful institutions. And someone wanted it back. Someone who would do anything to keep their secrets hidden. Emily glanced around frantically. There had to be a way out. She couldn't lead him back to her apartment. She couldn't go anywhere near her home. Her thoughts were racing, and panic was setting in. She needed help. But who could she trust? Then, she saw it. A narrow door to the left. It was barely visible in the shadows, but it was there. A small door, almost hidden behind a pile of trash bags. Without thinking, Emily veered toward it, her legs moving faster than her mind could process. She wrenched the door open with all her strength and slipped inside. The smell hit her first. It was damp, musty, and smelled like mold. But she didn't care. It was dark, too. Her heart raced as she closed the door behind her, blocking out the sound of the man's footsteps. For a moment, all she could hear was the rapid beat of her own heart. She stood in complete silence, her body pressed against the wall. The bag with the flash drive was heavy against her side. She listened intently. The footsteps had stopped. Had he passed her by? Emily took a deep breath, her lungs burning from the cold. She slowly moved away from the door and started walking down the narrow corridor. The place was old, abandoned, likely a forgotten storage area or utility room. The floor was uneven, and the walls were cracked and covered in grime. Her mind kept flashing back to what had happened earlier that day. The courtroom. The judge. The federal agents. Her world had shattered in an instant. One moment, she had been a simple housewife trying to get justice for a wrong done to her. The next, she was at the center of a conspiracy that reached all the way to the highest courts in the land. Why her? Why had they chosen her? She didn't have an answer. All she knew was that the truth was out there. And she was going to find it, no matter the cost. Emily moved deeper into the building, her footsteps echoing off the walls. The air felt thick and oppressive, as though the building itself was holding its breath. Suddenly, a door creaked open ahead of her. She froze. Someone was inside. Her heart skipped a beat. She pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate. Someone was coming closer. A voice. "Are you lost, Mrs. Harris?" Emily's breath caught in her throat. She turned slowly, only to find herself face to face with a tall man in a black suit. He was standing just a few feet away, his features hidden beneath the shadows. But there was something familiar about him. Something in the way he held himself. "Who are you?" Emily demanded, trying to sound braver than she felt. The man didn't move. He just stared at her with piercing, cold eyes. "I'm someone who can help," he said quietly. His voice was calm, almost soothing. But there was something about it that made her skin crawl. She stepped back, clutching her bag tighter. "I don't need your help," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't trust anyone anymore." The man took a step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "Not even your husband's people?" he asked, his tone almost mocking. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Her stomach twisted. "Who are you?" Emily repeated, this time louder. Her mind was racing, trying to process what he had just said. The man stepped closer, his silhouette now fully visible in the dim light. He had short-cropped hair and a scar running down the side of his neck. His expression was unreadable. "I work for your husband," he said. "But right now, I'm here to make sure you stay alive." Emily's mouth went dry. Her heart beat faster. "Alive?" she repeated, barely able to speak. The man nodded. "They're coming for you. The people who have been watching you. The people who are desperate to get their hands on that flash drive." Emily's breath caught. She had almost forgotten about the drive in her bag. The man's eyes flickered to it for a moment before returning to hers. "You have no idea how dangerous this situation is, do you?" he asked softly. Emily swallowed hard, but she didn't say anything. "I didn't think so," the man said. "Listen carefully. I'm not your enemy. But right now, we don't have time for questions. We need to move. They're already looking for you." Before Emily could respond, the man grabbed her arm and began pulling her down the narrow corridor. She stumbled, trying to keep up, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. Who was he? Why was he helping her? She didn't know. But one thing was clear. Her life was no longer her own. And whoever was behind this, whoever wanted the information she had, wasn't going to stop until they got it. The man led her through the building, past rooms filled with old, discarded furniture. They reached another door, and the man swung it open. Emily squinted against the bright light outside. The man shoved her toward a waiting car. "Get in," he ordered. She hesitated, but only for a second. If she didn't get in, she might not survive the night. Without a word, she climbed into the back seat. The man followed her and slammed the door shut. The car sped off into the night, the city lights flashing by in a blur. Emily didn't know where she was going. She didn't know who to trust. All she knew was that her world had been turned upside down, and there was no turning back. The night air was cold as the car sped through the empty streets, the faint hum of the engine the only sound filling the silence. Emily sat in the back seat, her mind a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and uncertainty. The man beside her, the one who claimed to be working for her husband, had not spoken a word since they'd driven away from the dimly lit alley. Who was he really? What did he want from her? And why had he said her husband's people were involved? Questions bounced around her mind in an endless loop, but no answers seemed to come. The car made sharp turns, taking them deeper into parts of the city Emily didn't recognize. The farther they went, the more she felt herself slipping into a world that was increasingly dark and dangerous. Everything she thought she knew was starting to unravel, piece by piece. She glanced at the man in the front seat. His features were hard to read, his eyes scanning the road ahead with a focus that betrayed nothing. He was tall, with a square jaw, and his clothes, though simple, seemed expensive. His hands gripped the wheel tightly, and he hadn't looked at her once since they left the courthouse. The seconds stretched on as the tension between them thickened. Emily wanted to ask him 1,000 questions, but the words caught in her throat. Something told her it wasn't the right time. She didn't know if she could trust him, and that terrified her. The car came to an abrupt stop. Emily's heart lurched in her chest as the sound of tires screeching against the asphalt broke the stillness of the night. She hadn't realized they had arrived at their destination until the man opened the door and stepped out without a word. The cold hit her immediately as she followed him out, her heels clicking against the pavement as she tried to keep up. They stood outside a small, nondescript building. It was old, its windows covered with grime, and the paint on the walls was peeling away in large chunks. The place looked abandoned, its dilapidated condition at odds with the high-end car that had brought them here. "Come on," the man said without turning to her. "We're safe here." Safe? Emily didn't feel safe. She felt more exposed than ever. But she had no choice. She followed him inside. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room. There were no windows, and the only source of light came from a lone bulb hanging from the ceiling. The space smelled of dust and mildew, and the air was thick with the weight of secrets. "Sit," the man said, pointing to a chair near a table in the center of the room. He moved toward the far corner, where a stack of files sat neatly arranged, each one labeled with a name and date. Emily hesitated, eyeing the man warily. She didn't want to sit. She didn't want to trust him. But what choice did she have? She lowered herself into the chair, the cold wood pressing against her legs. She clasped her hands tightly together, her knuckles turning white from the force. The man turned back to her, his face still unreadable. He set down the file he had been looking at and walked over to the table. For a moment, he just stared at her, as if weighing something in his mind. "You're probably wondering who I really am," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. "I'm not someone you should trust immediately. I don't expect that from you. But right now, we need to work together if you're going to survive." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Survive?" she echoed, her voice hoarse. "What are you talking about? What's going on? Who are these people after me?" The man sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated. You don't know the full picture yet. I can't tell you everything right now, but you have to believe me when I say your husband is more involved in this than you realize." Her heart sank at the mention of her husband. "What do you mean? What does he have to do with all of this?" The man's expression hardened. "Your husband is not the man you think he is. He's been playing both sides for years. And now you've become part of a much bigger game than you ever signed up for." Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. "That doesn't make sense. My husband's a good man. He's a judge. He's always been there for me." The man's lips tightened into a thin line. "I wish that were true. But you need to understand that the man you married is only one version of him. The other version, the one that most people don't see, is the one who's been working behind closed doors, pulling strings, making deals with people who shouldn't be in power." Emily's world seemed to shatter in that moment. Her husband? The man she had trusted with her life? How could it be true? But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. She had felt it all along. There had been whispers, hints of things she didn't understand. But this? This was more than she could process. "I don't believe you," Emily said, though her voice wavered. "I can't." "You have to," the man replied. "Look, we don't have time to go over everything in detail right now. But you need to trust me when I say there are people watching you, people who would kill to get their hands on that flash drive you're carrying. The one with all the information." Emily's fingers instinctively went to the bag at her side. The flash drive. The thing that had turned her life upside down. The reason she was sitting here in this dingy, dark room instead of being at home, safe. "The flash drive is just the beginning," the man continued. "It's not about the information on it, it's about what it represents. It's a key to unraveling something bigger. And right now, you're the only one who has it." She swallowed hard. Her mind was racing, but she couldn't form the words. What was the truth? She wanted to scream, to demand more answers, but the man's next words froze her. "I know who you're going to call," he said, his tone even. "You're going to try and reach out to your husband. You're going to think he can fix this, that he can help you. But I'm telling you, don't. He's not going to help you." Emily's stomach twisted. She could feel the knot in her chest tighten with every word he spoke. "I'm sorry," the man continued. "I'm not trying to scare you, but the truth is this, you're already in danger. And it's only going to get worse." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their meaning. She stared at him, her breath shallow, her mind spinning. She didn't know who to believe anymore. But one thing was certain. Her life was no longer in her hands. And the more she uncovered, the less she understood. Emily sat in the same chair, her fingers nervously tracing the edges of the table. The room, once cold and unfamiliar, now felt suffocating. The man who had led her here was still standing by the window, staring out into the darkness. Her thoughts raced, but her mind was a blur. Everything she had believed in her entire life had been turned upside down in a matter of hours. She had trusted her husband, the man she married years ago, the one who had stood by her through thick and thin. But now? Now, everything felt like a lie. The man, whose name she still didn't know, turned toward her with a look in his eyes that spoke of hard truths, truths that she wasn't ready to hear. He took a slow step toward her, his face serious. "I told you not to call your husband," he said, his voice low but firm. "But I know what you're thinking. You want answers. You want to believe in him. And I get it. But the truth isn't what you think." Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She had to know. She had to understand what was going on, even if it meant shattering the fragile world she had built in her mind. "What truth?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What's going on? Why are you doing this to me? Who are you?" The man's eyes softened, but only for a moment. He took another step forward, sitting down across from her. His movements were deliberate, calm. "My name is Gabriel," he said. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to protect you." "Protect me?" Emily whispered. She wanted to laugh, but there was nothing funny about this situation. She felt like a puppet, strung along in a game she didn't understand. "Your husband, Emily, is in over his head," Gabriel continued. "He's been involved in some very dangerous things. Things that go beyond the law. And you've been caught in the middle of it all." Emily felt the world around her spin. She shook her head, disbelief flooding through her. "No. I won't believe that. He's a judge. He's a good man. Gabriel raised a hand, cutting her off gently but firmly. "He's more than just a judge. And he's not the man you think he is. I wish it weren't true, but it is. A rush of emotions overwhelmed her. The betrayal stung deeper than anything she had ever felt. Her husband, the man she had loved, trusted, and built her life with, was hiding something dark. Something unimaginable. Gabriel leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers with a weight of urgency. "You need to listen to me, Emily. You're in danger. These people don't care about who you are, who your husband is. They care about the flash drive. The information on it. That's what they want. And the longer you hold on to it, the more danger you put yourself in." "The flash drive," Emily repeated, her voice barely audible. Her mind raced back to the moment she had first been handed it, so innocently, so unknowingly. What had it contained? What had it started? Gabriel paused, letting the silence settle between them before he spoke again. "Your husband isn't going to help you, Emily. I know you don't want to believe it, but he's already made his choice. He's been playing both sides. The flash drive is part of a much bigger operation. And now that you have it, there's no going back." Her breath hitched as she struggled to process everything. The world around her felt like it was crumbling, and every word Gabriel spoke seemed to shatter another piece of her reality. "Why are you helping me?" she finally managed to ask. "What do you want from me?" Gabriel's gaze softened once more, but it was tinged with something darker, something that hinted at pain, regret, or perhaps both. "I'm not helping you because I want something from you. I'm helping you because I believe in the truth. I've seen what happens when people get tangled in lies, when they refuse to see the bigger picture. I can't let you walk into that same trap." Emily stared at him, trying to piece together the puzzle of what he was saying. He seemed sincere, but how could she trust him? How could she trust anyone anymore? "You're telling me to trust you?" she asked bitterly. "I don't even know who you are. How do I know you're not part of this, too?" Gabriel looked down at the table, as if considering his words carefully. "I get why you'd be skeptical. I do. But I'm not your enemy. Your husband's people are. And if you want to stay safe, you need to start thinking for yourself. No one else is going to protect you. Not even him." The silence hung heavy between them. Emily's mind raced. She couldn't believe what she was hearing, but deep down, she knew Gabriel wasn't lying. Something in his voice, something in the way he spoke, told her he wasn't the enemy. He was offering her a lifeline. Suddenly, the weight of the truth seemed almost unbearable. She had trusted her husband with everything. And now? Now she had to face the fact that everything she thought she knew about him was wrong. He had been playing a dangerous game, and she had been a pawn in it. "Where is he?" Emily asked, her voice raw. "Where is my husband?" Gabriel looked at her, his eyes filled with regret. "I don't know. But he's already made his choice. And now it's up to you to decide what you're going to do." Emily's heart was racing. What choice did she have? She couldn't run from this. She couldn't hide. She had to face whatever was coming. For herself. For her future. The door creaked open behind them, and Emily's heart skipped a beat. She turned, her eyes widening in shock. Standing in the doorway was her husband. The man who had betrayed her. The man who had torn apart her world. He was standing there, his expression cold, calculating, and resigned. "Emily," he said, his voice low, almost lifeless. "I didn't want you to get involved in this, but it's too late now. You have to understand, I never wanted this. But I had no choice." Gabriel stood up, moving between Emily and her husband, his posture protective. "It's over, Thomas. You can't keep hiding behind your position anymore. The truth is out." Thomas's eyes flickered with something, fear, anger, regret, but it was gone before Emily could even fully comprehend it. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said, his voice almost breaking. But the people I'm involved with. Enough. Gabriel snapped, his voice cutting through the tension. You've made your choices, Thomas. And now, you have to live with the consequences. Emily's eyes flickered between the two men. Everything she had believed in, everything she had worked for, was crumbling before her. But she couldn't let herself fall apart now. She had to stand firm. I want the truth, she said, her voice shaking but determined. No more lies. I need to know everything. Thomas hesitated, his eyes darting between her and Gabriel. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, almost inaudible. The flash drive, Emily. It's not just information. It's the key to everything. And now that you have it, they won't stop until they get it back. Gabriel turned to Emily, his expression grave. That's why you're in danger. And that's why we have to get out of here. Right now. Emily nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what was going to happen next. But one thing was certain. The life she had known was over. And she was about to discover how far people would go for power, for control, and for the truth.